How current change in supply and demand works in favor of the educated seller and buyer for 2023. Hi, this is Robbie Thomas with Realty Experts, the Bay Area Downsizer. So let's get into the mortgage rates first and see what's been happening in the last few years. The 30-year fixed rate doubled last year from a low of 3.22 to 6.42 in December. And that does not help a buyer. For 50 years, the 30-year mortgage rate has moved in unison with the 10-year Treasury yield. What that means is the 10-year Treasury yield, which is represented by the blue line, is over here at the bottom, and the 30-year fixed mortgage rate is over here outlined at the top, and there is a spread between them of 1.7%. So why are mortgage rates not 5.5%? Well, the increase in the spread above the 10-year yield is now dramatic because what used to be 1.79, which is added on top of the 3.49, which is the base rate, adds to 5.28. That's what we were seeing from around fluctuating between 2000 and 2021. And today, the mortgage rate is, which is an average about 6.48%, is because the spread just jumped to 2.79. So if you add this, it comes to about 6.48%. Well, you can make it 5.4 if it were 1.79%. So you see the difference over here too is it jumped from 3.49 base rate to 3.69. Add to that is another 1 point hike uh, in the spread, and that's how you get the 6.48. So panic happened around the April, May, June, July, when the interest rates started spiking and the buyers just couldn't afford to get to that point. So if you look at the 50-year average, it used to be at like 1.8%. And you can, the following chart will show you the trend direction and trend too. So you see the trend line, it just goes higher up to like 2.2, which is the spread. And then it spikes again October and November, and peaks around beginning or the end of November and December, and then starts falling in January, end of December and January. So even though it's falling, there's still a difference of about 1% since its lows. So the confident seller and the confident buyer knows what is happening in the market, and they price the home right if they're the seller, and if they're the buyer, they know how to make the right offer, make it as acceptable as possible for the seller, and get into contract. The confused seller and the confused buyer go nowhere because they are clueless to the direction, and they have no idea what's coming. So if you were to pay attention to the real data, you would automatically educate yourself to become more confident, because if you know the downside risk, then you can take a directive as to which direction you want to go. And the upcoming month should see a return of buyers, says Lawrence Yun, the chief economist from NAR, which is National Association of Realtors, as mortgage rates appear to have already peaked and have been coming down since mid November. David Stevens, from former Assistant Secretary of Housing, also says, so be advised, this may be the one and only window for the next few years to get into a buyer's market. And remember, as the Federal Reserve data shows, home prices only go up and always recover from recessions, no matter how mild or severe. Long-term homeowners should view this market right now as a unique buying opportunity. The home price update. This chart shows over here the home price forecast for 2023 by source, which is Realtor.com, HPES, NAR, Freddie Mac, MBA, Fannie Mae, and Zellman. So the average of all the seven forecasts show that there is a zero point 0.1 increment, because they don't agree completely with each other. In fact, they disagree, and the take opposing views among them all. Um, which we are going to see why. Home appreciation pre and post pandemic, which is pre 2021, you see the regular 12% growth in home prices. After 2020, this March of 2020 up to 2022, end of 2022, the home prices appreciated by 38%. That's a huge jump. Share of homes having their prices reduced, percentage of homes with price reduced year over year over a 12-month period, you'll see that, excuse me, share of homes have increased from April since the interest rates started hiking. So when the interest rates started coming up, the percentage of homes that with their price reduced increased all the way till November. So the next question would be: have home values hit bottom? Well, that's a good question. Well, they haven't, but they have declined. These are the four indexes: the Case-Shiller, FHFA, Black Knight, and CoreLogic that track these numbers. So you can see over here up to June nationwide, they were appreciating month over month uh, at zero point 0.6, zero point 0.2, zero point 0.1, and zero point 0.6, and then they started declining right here. You can see here. So you see the decline. So now that we have the data, who controls the narrative wins. So if it's the buyer who's controlling the narrative, uh, speaking doom and gloom, going with the outlets, the news outlets, well, then you have a declining price. But if you're a seller who is not buying into that narrative, who understands that the shortage of inventory, especially here in California, which is like about 10 years worth of housing. I mean, studies have shown that 50% of most Californians are still renters. In fact, there are a great percentage of that is generational renters simply because there's not that much new builds and available for affordable housing. So, keeping that in perspective, let's see what awaits us. Now, the data shows that um, last year about 4,090,000 homes sold. And if you divide that by 365 days, you get about 11,000 homes sell every single day. So when people say, oh, homes are not selling, which is not true, they still sell, and it's about 11,205 a day. And if you further break it down, um, divided by 24 hours, you get about 8 houses that sell every minute in America. So there's for every home that sells, there is a buyer out there. Well, that brings us to what other things can be done to ease the pain of a buyer who is now facing a higher cost of owning a home because of the interest rates, high interest rates. Well, many banks have now stepped in to bring in new programs called the two-in buy-down, 2-1 buy-down, which is the first 2 years you can lock in a lower rate, and the third year they can, it jumps to an adjustable rate mortgage. And that is possible because the initial lower cost of entry to owning a home. So here's a statement from Laurie Goodman and Karen Call from the Urban Land Institute. The risks of arms were substantially mitigated by the regulatory reforms put in place after the 2008 bust. Today's ARMS or ARMS are not the risky products of 2008 or even the pre bubble version. ARMS are no longer something to fear. In fact, they could help borrowers save money and reduce barriers to home ownership. Lindsay F. Hershey, Director of News Reporting, Real Estate News, also says that the temporary rate buy downs are a hot trend for mortgages as borrowers face higher costs for home loans. Some buyers are exploring alternatives to traditional mortgages in a period of rising interest rates that is expected to continue into 2023. Buy downs are a less costly alternative to traditional fixed rate mortgages. So the biggest opportunity right now is if you have a target as a seller to sell, the steps that have to be taken are in the direction that they want to achieve, but in small increments. And let me explain as we go along. And if you're a buyer, you should do the same. You take small steps into reaching your target. So let's dwell into the active listings for the past 2 years. You will see that in 2021, active listings were about 445,784. And in 2022, there was 751,544. So there's a great increment, like almost double inventory was available. If you look at the 2022 pending list count in the last 12 months, you will see that in January there was about minus 6%, and by November there was minus 36% of pending reduction. It reduced, in fact, it went into negative, which is minus 36%. What it tells us is there's still a lot of people who are planning to sell, but it's not going pending. So let's look at the home sales. So if you look at the absorption rate, or what we call in the industry the absorption rate, is nothing but the total number of homes on the market in any square footage, any condition, and the number of buyers that are planning to get into escrow and close. The number of days on the market is called the absorption rate. So if you look over here, January 2019, we had 46 days on market. Average homes on the market stood for 46 days. While if you look at January 2022, if you look at June, most homes sat on the market for only 14 days. And by November, it started increasing again to 24 days on the market. So the longer it sits on the market, the more the chances of price reduction and the more reasons for buyers to walk away from a home. And that is contrarian, but that is how it is. Existing home sales since January 2014, if you look at it, I had mentioned at the beginning, an average about Jan 2021, it peaked about 6.8 million homes sold. This is not new construction, but they're resales, which is somebody actually owns the property and they put it up for sale and it sells. So 6.8 million homes sold in 2021. And you see that great decline here as of now, January 22 to November, December of 2022. It's been declining steadily. Existing home sales year over year by region. So in the US, minus 35.4% reduced of existing home sales. And in the West, minus 45.7. So it's almost 50% of existing home sales reduced. Existing home sales in thousands, if you were to look at it, you can see here November gives the 3 bars, December is not updated yet. But you can see that in 2022, existing home sales took a real dip here. You can see a steady decline, like a step down in the number of homes selling. New homes in the thousands also started declining, but you can see it's holding steady. They're sitting on the market longer and they're still selling, but at some point they stop decelerating. Pending home sales. So if you look at the pending home sales, 100 is a historically healthy level, where if anything falls below 100, and you can see that sharp decline in January 2020, just before the pandemic and all that confusion happening over there, pending homes declined sharply. And you can see here in January 2020, it peaked again over here. In January 2021, it peaked even higher. And then by December of January 2022, you can see the great decline, which is almost reaching the lower number over here at this trough. Percentage of distressed property sales. So if you look at the foreclosures and properties like that, there's hardly anything out there. People keep saying, like, if you go to the news channels, they'll go, there's a wave of foreclosures coming, but where are they? There aren't many. And look, these are the real numbers. So 35% foreclosures in 2012, and over here in Jan 2022, there's barely anything. It's less than 4%. In fact, less than 1%. You see a small spike here, but that's not enough to create that flood of inventory that will crash prices. Home prices percentage change in sales, so year over year by price range. So if you're looking at the million plus, you will see a decline of 40 minus 41.2% has decreased in prices from its peak. And the price is a bracketing, it's not like an exact number. So anything over a million plus, and depends from zip code to zip code. Some areas the average price point may be 1.2 million, another area it may be 2.5 million. So anyway, wherever it is, there is a decline of an average of minus 41.2%. Housing inventory. So the month's inventory of homes for sale from 2011 to today is not that low, it's not that high either, because it's under 3.5 months inventory of homes for sale. The absorption rate, so all the homes on the market actually get bought by an average of about 3.3 months. The closer it gets to the 6 months period, you will see, like here you got 4.6 months. If you go, so 6 months is the balanced market where there's a home for every buyer that's looking out there. But so even though there is an increase in the number of days on market that the homes are sitting, they still sell in about 3.5 months. There is buyer demand. Year over year inventory levels. So you can see the inventory really dipped in 2021. So when supply and demand, as I had mentioned in the beginning, when supply, this is the supply, when the supply dips this low, prices inversely are proportionate. They go higher and they peak. And that's what you saw in January 2021 to middle of January, before the interest rates started climbing and prices started cooling. um, the supply was really short, and now you see a small uptick in inventory again. So showing traffic, that is the foot traffic that is inside, that comes inside an open house or a home for sale, also dipped. So, and the average in the entire US market, about 30.2% declined. And in the West, which is California, West Coast, of about 55.4% decline. So many of the open houses that you can see that are being held barely see, like, 50% of the traffic, less than 50% of the traffic um, to the prior year, which is what this data shows. So the latest information as of January this month is that buyer demand increased by 28% in January 2023. And this is data from the banks because of the new mortgage applications that have spiked, and the offers that are being made on new homes, which are of, I mean, not all properties, but most properties that have very little work to be done, or their newer construction, are getting multiple offers, and that's because of the 28% spike in mortgage interest. Mortgage rates. So let's look at the 30-year fixed rate from January 2016 to today. So we have seen the chart earlier, but this is just a reminder that in January, not in January, in 2021, mid 2021, interest rates actually touched close to 3% for a 30-year fixed. And today they're at 6.42. So they almost doubled. So if they doubled in interest, buyer power has reduced, is what it means. So if the buyer power reduces, home prices also will reduce. Let's now look at the mortgage rate projections from the Big Four, which is Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, MBA, and National Association of Realtors. So, quarter one of 2023, Freddie Mac says 6.6, Fannie Mae 6.5, MBA 6.2, and NAR 6.0. And the average of all the four brings it to 6.35 at the end of quarter one. Quarter two, the average is 6.04. Quarter three is 5.90, and quarter four is 5.73. So there is a consensus for a steady decline in interest for the 30-year fixed mortgage. And this is the same data on a chart. Here's the other problem that buyers face. So sellers feel that their prices are cooling and they're not getting the best of the environment. But if you look at the buyer's side, mortgage credit availability also is declining because it's harder and harder for the buyers to get a mortgage which is well within their budget of comfort too. And this graph clearly shows the decline in the credit availability index. So here's what I have to tell the buyers and the sellers. Now that you have all this information in your hand, I just wanted to bring an analogy. I was watching Michael Schumacher the other day on one of his YouTube videos, and you see that he overtakes all the competition at every turn. So when you're making a turn, a sharp turn, when most people are trying to figure out how to handle the turn, the winner overtakes and accelerates at that point of turn. This is the same thing for real estate. We are at a turn in our real estate pricing and mortgage rates and inventory. So, an educated seller or an educated buyer knows what to do by overtaking the competition during the turn and not waiting for more competition to come in. I hope this has helped you. This is Robbie Thomas with Realty Experts, the Bay Area Downsizer.